only, trash talk that used to happen with me, I wouldn't even respond to it, is when I would go to fights and they would go, "Oh, I'm going to knock you out." And I'll be like, "You could try, but no one did. And I don't think you will." That's the most. I never got into those trash talking. I leave that to my brother.
Like, I was rereading our interview from like 12 years ago. And, it's like there's some fascinating stuff there. I mean, like Mike said, you've had like an amazing career, to be honest. The amount of fights you've had, people you fought, places you fought in, it's unbelievable. You only retired what, like a year ago or 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, 2 years ago when I came to Shanghai. That's actually the reason I came to Shanghai.
And are you training somebody there?
Right now, it's mainly classes and have a few amateur fighters. So
why Shanghai?
The offer came in right at the right opportunity.
Okay. How was it over there during the pandemic?
I actually was back in New York on vacation and got stuck in New York. So I recently returned to Shanghai. So I was in the USA for 9 months. So I came back in November. And they're pretty much back to normal here and have been for the last few months.
Good for you guys.
Okay. You mentioned a couple of amateurs. Is there any names that we should look out for? I mean, today's amateurs or tomorrow's champions, Well,
they're pretty young.
Okay.
The couple of the boys are 9, 10 years old.
Oh, okay.
So, their goal is fighting in the MMA. So,
okay.
And the gym is a UFC fit gym. So we do have jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, and boxing, and they're doing all of that. Otherwise, there are a few fighters that have reached out to me to train them. But since I recently returned and am working with this company, I cannot work with other fighters unless they're with the gym.
Oh, I see. It's like contract.
I plan on getting my own company so then I can be a freelancer, or they would call it consulting here. So then I would be able to work with other people.
I remember that during our last interview we had, you told me you had never fought in New York City up until that point. This was like 2000, whenever we had it. But since then, how many fights have you had in New York?
I probably had maybe 5 or 6. It still was not a lot. I'm going to say that 3/4 of my fighting career was on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And until I fought in New York, I was always the opponent, even as a champion.
Mm-hmm.
You fought in the Hunt's Food Market in the Bronx.
Yes, the fish market. Yes, that's where I won. I won back the WBC title.
Who's the toughest opponent that you had?
Very hard to say who was toughest. And I mean, for me, one of the most complete fighters was Laura Serrano.
I know Laura very well. She became a lawyer.
Yes, and one of the
By the way,
hardest
she got robbed against Christy Martin.
Oh yes, of course. But then she was also fighting way out of her weight class. One of the hardest hitting was Chevelle Hallbeck. And that one was kind of me surviving.
I remember asking you about, again, this is all like you've had so many fights since then, but I asked you which of the fights you felt you truly lost, and you had mentioned that Hallback was the fight that you felt like you truly lost, but okay, she was way bigger.
Serrano, I knew I lost. She's a complete fighter. She's a beautiful fighter. I really admired her. Hallback, I knew I lost. That one was just, I was way out of my weight class. I went up in weight to fight her, but she was a beast, So after getting hit the first 2 rounds, it was like, if you get hit, this is not going to be pretty. So that was those 2 are for me true losses. And if you look at my record, most of my at least 5, I should have at least 5 losses that are split decision losses and a draw. And those are, of course, are in someone else's territory. And none of them would give me a rematch. Like I won against Marcela Acuna in Argentina, a split decision win. And I immediately gave her a rematch. I mean, she did a tune-up in between, but I immediately gave her a rematch because I knew that I won. But every other loss, they would refuse to give me a rematch.
And, I mean, that could be one of the issues with women's boxing to me, because there's a lot of this, like, we want to save the cash cow and, save our fighter. That's why I feel like a lot of the big fights that could be made, maybe they're sort of not doing them because they don't want to have their big name in the local place lose. I don't know if you have the same thought or.
I don't really see women right now, then or now, as cash cows. Because definitely aren't making the cash. And
okay.
And they're not cash cows because they're not showing them. The one reason I did travel so much, true, was that I was shown on television every other place that I went other than in the USA.
Mm-hmm.
So I am more well known internationally than I was known nationally, because the women there were headliners and were televised. So those women made a little bit more money than USA, definitely.
So,
but actually, now that I think about it, they probably were cash cows for them because they were being advertised a lot more than the US.
And that's what I mean. I mean, I'm not saying that they're like Floyd Mayweather type cash cows, but they're going to make a little bit more money than, that's sort of why they don't want them to lose or whatever. All right.
Of all the countries you went to and boxed, what was the most fun trip you had?
There was a couple later in my boxing career, because most of the time when I would go to fight, even though I'm going to all these great countries, I'm going to fight. So I never really had time to go visit the places. And usually when they bring you in to fight, they bring you in just a few days, and then right after the fight, they kick you out, So later in my career, I started asking to have them do my return flights a few days later, so that at least, even, I'll pay for the hotel if need be, but at least I would get to enjoy the city a little bit.
How did they treat you in Denmark?
Okay. I mean, they let me do my thing. But for me, I think I had the most fun in Argentina and in Mexico. Mexico, I was able to go for 2 of my fights. I went there a few weeks earlier to acclimate, because they were in Mexico City, higher altitude. So I went there, I had a few weeks, so I was able to see the country a little bit more.
Alicia, Slavik considers you the Bernard Hopkins of female boxing. How do you feel about that title?
I'm not just considered Bernard Hopkins because of Slav, but in the Guinness World Record, I am not just the female of Bernard Hopkins, because I've won 3 Guinness World Records, 2 for being the oldest female to ever win a world title, and the last one was the oldest person. So I actually beat Bernard Hopkins by a few weeks of being the oldest person to win a world title. So
Body blow.
Hopkins should be happy to be considered, the male version of Alicia Ashley.
I mean, my hope is that if I put that as the title for a youth, because I'm going to split this up into various, if I'm going to put just, I beat Bernard Hopkins, my hope that's going to get a bunch of views.
No, but Bernard Hopkins should be happy to be considered the female version, the male version.
I can experiment with both.
You don't plan to go to Philadelphia anytime soon, do you?
Actually, when I was back in the USA, I was training someone out in wasn't Philadelphia, but it was in Pennsylvania.
Hopkins territory.
I'll go to Philly. Don't worry about that.
She went to North Korea. She'll go to.
You know what? The food's better in North Korea. You do some kind of a sparring session with Camacho?
I remember you telling me that.
Quite a while back. I mean, he played with me. I actually trained with him. Hector Roca was his trainer when he was getting ready to fight De La Hoya. No. Yes. And we did a training in Florida. I think I was getting ready for a fight also. So I went down there and trained. And probably at maybe 5th Street Gym in Miami or something like that, we might have done a little bit of sparring. He, did his dance.
Was it macho time? Or was it Ashley time?
Was it like, yeah, I mean, like, were there any specifics that you remember? It was like, how many rounds was it? Anything? Did he tell you anything? Did you guys trash talk? I don't know.
No, he's a funny guy, He was just always this, he's just always had a joke. He was great to hang out with. I don't think it was him like giving me any advice. It was just more like a fun session than anything.
Okay. And then
did you ever think of becoming a promoter yourself?
No. No, I guess just having so many bad experiences with promoters, I never wanted to go on that side of the business.
Okay. All right. How about the one about when Floyd Mayweather Sr. told you that who do you fight like?
Well, I mean, like I fought a little bit like his son, but that kind of was like in passing. So I think we were at a fight and he had a female fighter at the same time on the card.
Not your opponent. It was
not my opponent.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. I don't think he would have spoken to me then.
Okay.
If I beat his fighter. But I've had great accolades fighting. I mean, I've had Muhammad Ali in a skirt, and for me, Pernell Whitaker was, being compared to him was a great highlight for me.
Now, who made the comparisons? Was it like just reporters? Who was it?
Reporters. Yes, when I
Let's
fought in,
straighten that out. Let's get the women. Time out. Muhammad Ali wasn't wearing a skirt. You were wearing the skirt.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why that's the difference in the comparison. I'm Muhammad Ali in a skirt.